Welcome back to Crime Podcastle for episode 57, our Unsolved Mystery series.
Yeah.
Today, we're diving deep into a story that blends political intrigue, corruption, and a series of suspicious deaths. It's a case that captivated India back in 2013 and continues to raise unsettling questions to this day.
You know what's fascinating about this case is it really exposes the human cost of corruption. We often think about these scandals in terms of like financial losses or political fallout, but the Railgate scandal and the subsequent deaths remind us that real lives are at stake.
Right. Okay, so let's set the stage for our listeners. We're talking about the Railgate scandal in India, which involved the Ministry of Railways. For those of us not familiar with India's infrastructure, help us understand the sheer scale of this ministry.
Imagine a network of railways so vast that it transports the equivalent of the entire population of Europe every single year. That's the Indian Railways, employing over 1.4 million people and serving as the lifeline of the nation. So when corruption seeps into an organization of that magnitude, the impact is colossal.
Yeah, it makes sense. And that's precisely what happened with the Railgate scandal, right? It wasn't just a few misplaced rupees. It was a full-blown scheme involving bribes, promotions, and political figures at the highest levels.
Absolutely. The scandal broke with the arrest of Mahesh Kumar, a high-ranking official in the railway board. He was caught trying to bribe his way into a more lucrative position, and the trail quickly led investigators to Vijay Singla, the nephew of the then railway minister.
So we're talking about a bribery scheme that reached the upper echelons of government, implicating the railway minister himself. What was the public reaction to this?
Outrage, understandably. The scandal sparked massive protests and public outcry demanding accountability and transparency. The pressure ultimately led to the railway minister's resignation, creating a major political earthquake.
Wow. So far, we have a classic corruption scandal: greed, power, political fallout. But this is Crime Podcastle, and we know things are about to take a darker turn. This is where the suspicious deaths come in, right? Tell us about the victims and their connection to the Railgate scandal.
Okay, so as the investigation into the scandal gained momentum, a series of deaths began to occur, each linked to individuals involved in the case. The timing and circumstances surrounding these deaths raised immediate red flags. The first victim was Sandeep Dahiya, a senior railways official who was found dead in his apartment shortly after the scandal broke.
And the official ruling was suicide, correct? But I recall reading something about inconsistencies in the evidence, something that made investigators question that initial ruling.
You're absolutely right. While the cause of death pointed to suicide, there were unusual marks found on Dahiya's neck that couldn't be definitively explained. Forensic experts couldn't rule out the possibility of foul play, which cast a shadow of doubt over the entire case.
That's interesting. Then there's the case of Rakesh Kumar, another key figure in the Railgate investigation, whose death, also ruled a suicide, occurred just weeks after Dahiya's. What made his death particularly suspicious?
What's unsettling about Kumar's death are the reports from his family and colleagues describing his extreme anxiety and fear in the days leading up to his death. Some even suggested he might have been receiving threats. This wasn't just a man dealing with the stress of an investigation. This was someone who seemed genuinely terrified.
Right. So we have two high-ranking officials, both with crucial information about the Railgate scandal, both found dead under questionable circumstances. And there's a third victim, a lower-level official with access to sensitive information.
Yes, this third death, while also officially ruled a suicide, was particularly jarring because of its timing. It came on the heels of Dahiya and Kumar's deaths, fueling speculation that something more sinister might be at play.
3 deaths, all connected to the Railgate scandal, all ruled suicides despite some unsettling details. At this point, it's hard not to wonder, were these men driven to take their own lives by the weight of the scandal? Or were they silenced to protect a powerful network of corrupt individuals?
Exactly. That's the million-dollar question. And it's a question that has haunted investigators and the families of the victims for years. We'll delve into the investigation and explore the various theories surrounding these deaths in just a moment.
Okay, so stay with us. We'll be right back after a quick break.
You know, these deaths put immense pressure on the investigators. Not only were they dealing with a high-profile corruption scandal, but now they had these suspicious deaths. That had the potential to unravel everything. The public was demanding answers. And the eyes of the nation were on the Central Bureau of Investigation, the CBI.
Right, the CBI. For our listeners who might not be familiar, is India's premier investigative agency. They're like the FBI of India, handling the most complex and sensitive cases. So what did the CBI find when they started digging into these deaths? Did the evidence support the suicide rulings, or did they uncover anything pointing towards foul play?
The evidence was a bit of a mixed bag, which often happens in these intricate investigations. Let's start with the forensic evidence. In all three cases, the cause of death was consistent with suicide, asphyxiation poisoning. The methods aligned with self-inflicted deaths. However, remember those peculiar marks on Sandeep Dahiya's neck, the ones the forensic experts couldn't quite explain.
Right, those marks really stuck with me. They seem to contradict the idea of a straightforward suicide.
Exactly. Those marks were never fully explained. The forensic team couldn't definitively say whether they were self-inflicted or caused by someone else, and that uncertainty lingered over the entire investigation.
What about witnesses? Did anyone come forward with information that suggested these men might have been murdered?
Well, there were a lot of testimonies about the victims' mental states. Before their deaths, family members, friends, and colleagues all described Dahiya and Kumar as incredibly anxious, even fearful. Some people hinted at potential threats, but no one came forward with concrete evidence of coercion or direct threats.
So a lot of unsettling feelings and anxieties, but no hard proof to connect these deaths to something more sinister. It must have been incredibly frustrating for the investigators, trying to piece together a puzzle with missing pieces.
Absolutely. It was like trying to see through a dense fog. You know something's there, but you can't quite make out the shape of it. It's particularly heartbreaking for the families of these men. They're left grappling with the uncertainty, never truly knowing what happened to their loved ones.
You know, you mentioned earlier that this case highlights the human cost of corruption. It makes me think that even if these deaths were suicides, the scandal itself created this environment of fear and pressure, a situation where people might feel trapped and desperate.
That's a profound observation. Even without direct threats, the psychological burden of being caught up in a massive corruption scandal like this can be immense. Imagine the fear of exposure, the potential legal ramifications, the public scrutiny. It's a heavy weight to carry.
So we have these deaths shrouded in mystery, and a web of corruption that seems to touch everything. What are the prevailing theories about what truly happened to these men?
Well, there are a few theories that have been put forward, each with its strengths and weaknesses. It's important to remember that none of these theories are definitively proven. We're dealing with speculation here, attempts to make sense of a tragedy. The first theory, and perhaps the most straightforward, is that the deaths were indeed suicides. The pressure of the investigation, the fear of prosecution, the potential public humiliation. All of this could have pushed these men to take their own lives.
It's certainly a plausible explanation, especially given the high-stakes nature of the scandal. But do you think the suicide theory fully accounts for the inconsistencies we discussed earlier? The marks on Dahiya's neck, the anxieties reported by witnesses?
That's the challenge with this theory. Those details don't quite fit neatly into the suicide narrative, and they've fueled speculation that there might be more to the story.
Right. Which leads us to other theories, right?
Yeah.
The ones that delve into the possibility of something more nefarious, something darker.
Yes. The next theory suggests that these weren't suicides at all, but carefully orchestrated murders. Think about it. If you were trying to bury a scandal as big as Railgate, silencing potential witnesses would be a very effective, albeit ruthless, way to protect yourself. The timing of the deaths, the fact that each victim possessed sensitive information. It all adds an unsettling layer to this theory.
That's a chilling thought. But wouldn't eliminating witnesses attract even more scrutiny? Wouldn't that be incredibly risky for those involved in the cover-up?
It would be a gamble for sure. But if it was orchestrated by powerful individuals with connections and resources, they might have felt confident they could get away with it. However, if these were planned hits, they were carried out masterfully. Investigators never found any direct evidence linking the deaths to the masterminds behind the Railgate scandal.
Wow, so we have suicide. And we have the chilling possibility of planned assassinations. To protect a corrupt network, are there any other theories we should consider?
There's another theory. That delves into the complex world of the Indian Railways itself. Remember, this is a massive organization. With a lot of money and power flowing through it, it's not inconceivable that internal rivalries and power struggles could have played a role in these deaths.
So you're saying that the deaths might have been the result of power plays within the railways itself, not necessarily directly connected to the Railgate scandal.
Exactly. It's possible that these deaths were orchestrated to eliminate rivals, consolidate power, or even create scapegoats. Imagine being able to pin the blame for a scandal on someone else, deflecting attention away from yourself. It's a ruthless strategy, but not entirely implausible in a high-stakes environment like this.
Okay, so we have suicides potentially driven by the pressure of the scandal. We have the possibility of orchestrated murders to silence witnesses. And now we have the intrigue of internal power struggles within the railways. Is there anything else we should consider?
There's one more theory, and it's the one that many find the hardest to accept, the theory of pure coincidence.
You're saying that these 3 deaths, all linked to the Railgate scandal, were completely unrelated to the scandal itself. That it was just a tragic series of unrelated events.
It seems incredibly improbable given the timing and the connections I know, but it's a possibility that can't be completely ruled out. Maybe these men were struggling with personal issues that we're not aware of, and their deaths, while tragic, were unrelated to the larger conspiracy.
So we have 4 distinct theories: suicide silencing witnesses, internal power struggles, and pure coincidence. Each theory raises more questions than answers. And it makes you wonder what secrets died with these men. Do you think we'll ever know the full truth?
It's difficult to say. Sometimes, even with the most thorough investigations, the truth remains elusive. The Railgate Scandal Murders have become a chilling example of that. They serve as a reminder of the complexities of power, corruption, and the human cost that often accompanies the pursuit of truth.
And what about the families of these men? They must feel an incredible sense of injustice, never knowing for sure what truly happened to their loved ones.
The lack of closure must be agonizing. Imagine living with the constant question of what if. Did they take their own lives? Were they murdered? Were they caught in a web of power struggles they never even knew existed? These are questions that haunt not only the families, but also investigators and anyone who has followed this case closely.
It's a stark reminder that sometimes, even with thorough investigations, the truth remains elusive. It's a truly unsettling thought that a scandal like Railgate could create an environment where people might feel so trapped and desperate that they would resort to taking their own lives. Or even more disturbing, that someone could exploit that situation and eliminate those who posed a threat.
Yeah. What strikes me is how this case underscores the far-reaching impact of corruption. It's not just about financial losses or political maneuvering. It's about eroding trust, weakening institutions, and creating a climate of fear where seeking the truth can have devastating consequences.
You know, it makes you wonder what happened in the aftermath of the Railgate scandal and these suspicious deaths. Were there any consequences? Any reforms put in place to prevent something like this from happening again?
Well, the Railgate scandal did spark a public outcry for greater transparency and accountability within the Indian Railways. There were discussions about stricter regulations for promotions, more thorough background checks for officials, and stronger protections for whistleblowers.
So at least on paper, some positive steps were taken. But the real question is, did those reforms translate into meaningful change?
Well, systemic change is a slow and complex process. While the Railgate scandal brought the issue of corruption to the forefront, it's hard to say definitively whether it resulted in lasting concrete changes within the Indian Railways.
It feels like we're left with a lot of unanswered questions. What truly happened to those men? Will we ever know for sure? And will there ever be genuine accountability for the corruption that plagued the Indian Railways?
Those are questions that continue to linger not only for the families of the deceased, but for anyone who has delved into the complexities of this case. The Railgate Scandal Murders serve as a chilling reminder of the dark underbelly of power, the potential for corruption to destroy lives, and the enduring mysteries that sometimes surround even the most high-profile cases.
It's a story that stays with you, making you question everything you thought you knew about justice and accountability. It reminds us that sometimes the truth is elusive, and the pursuit of it can be fraught with danger and uncertainty. It also makes you think about the immense courage it takes for whistleblowers to come forward, knowing the potential risks involved.
Absolutely. This case serves as a stark reminder of the importance of protecting those who speak truth to power. Without whistleblowers, corruption can fester and spread unchecked and unchallenged.
Will said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Railgate Scandal Murders. It's been a sobering exploration of a case that exposes the human cost of corruption, the complexities of seeking justice, and the enduring power of unanswered questions.
It's been a privilege to share my insights with you and our listeners.
And to all of you listening, thank you for joining us here at CrimePod Castle. We hope this episode has given you a glimpse into the intricate world of political intrigue, corruption, and the pursuit of justice, even when the answers remain elusive. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Railgate Scandal Murders, be sure to follow and subscribe to CrimePod Castle for more compelling true crime stories. We'll be back soon with another episode that's sure to keep you on the edge of your seat. Until then, stay curious and stay vigilant.